and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast, where we welcome our communist, totalitarian rulers. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back, Right Guys podcast. Happy Friday. It is Friday. Hard to celebrate because, well, there's good news. So we're not going to do all polls today, but I text Josh now when the good ones come in, letting him know that Emerson now has Trump up +2 in Pennsylvania, and the Economist poll that came out that says, "Oh, Kamala Harris is up too." The sample is Democrat +2. So you have to really look at these, right? If they have a sample and it's weighted, they weighted it this way on purpose to say we believe that there will be 2% more Democrats, and then the Democrat candidate is up by 2. It answers how it happens, right?
Yeah.
When there's a Democrat sample +5 and Kamala Harris is up 5, what that tells you is this is a turnout election. It's 100% a turnout election.
And I was really impressed that Kamala has just jumped up so high in the polls, and then she comes out today swinging on some things that just my mind. Like I didn't even know what to say. I was thinking, let's have fun. Let's kind of talk about Elon Musk or something. And you're like, no. Do you see what she's saying right now? And I was flabbergasted by it.
Well, how did you just pronounce her name?
Kamala?
Not Kamala, it's Kamala.
Kamala.
Yes. And
like a comma and a la.
Yes.
Okay.
If you
what did I break a rule here?
I have to pull the clip, but there was a big blow up on CNN last night. Because Representative Nancy Mace didn't pronounce Kamala Harris's name correctly. She just did what you did. And she was accused of racism live on air.
Oh.
So
really? I just cannot pronounce a name.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let me upload it.
The bar for racist is low now these days, man. Like it is.
That sounds like self-hatred and justification of white supremacy. And let me just say this, because this congresswoman is a wonderful human being, but when you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
Oh, so now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't a racist.
That is complete.
No, you don't have to intend racism to accomplish
No. You are
it.
intending that I am
Your disrespect
racist,
of Kamala Harris is part and parcel of a tradition of disrespect.
It's offensive,
Congresswoman,
why can't you just? I'm
not calling you a racist. I'm telling you what the practice is racist.
You are. You absolutely are.
Let me get
disrespecting. No, what's disgusting is your disrespect of her.
Professor.
This gentleman said, I didn't know her name. He's trying to do it.
Is her disrespect of women. She doesn't know what a woman is. And if 25 years ago,
white women don't have the ability to tell black women who paid the price of blood to make this country what it is to tell them they're not real women.
25
they
years
care
ago,
for your babies
25 years ago, I became
humanity.
the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. I
so
fought my way through it.
So pronounce her name
blood,
right.
sweat, and tears.
Kamala
Harris. If
Kamala.
we don't
call you Nancy Mace.
It's Kamala.
This is live.
You're doing this on purpose, Congresswoman.
That's disrespectful.
You can't expect people to respect yourself.
All right.
Wow.
So just so we're absolutely clear, here's Joe Biden talking about his vice president.
Kamala are here today to make a major announcement in efforts to lower.
Had to do it.
Kamala.
Racist.
Kamala.
Racist.
Kamala. She's on the ticket with him. And he says Kamala. So listen, Kamala is how I've often heard it said from Indians, right?
Yeah.
Kamala, you don't really hear Kamala. But that's how she wants it to be said. That's fine. But every time I've ever heard the name in the Indian context, it's been Kamala.
I mean, has anybody ever not pronounced someone's name right? You know, I have you ever been somewhere during roll call and you're like, I don't even know how to say this one?
Kamala are here today to make a major announcement. Kamala are here today to make a
Kamala.
Kamala, say it right, Joe. Say your name, Joe.
Racist.
He's the racist.
Sorry, I just had to bring it up because you you might have unknowingly been stoking the fires of white supremacy. And I
Was that
know,
a dog whistle? Was I blowing on a dog whistle? Was that?
I know that that's on your to-do list of things not to do.
Yeah.
Stoke the fires of white supremacy.
Right.
Just want to make sure
Right.
that we're all on the same page. That if you put the wrong emphasis on a different syllable, you're actually a literal Hitler.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't know I would turn into that kind of evil person just for a sentence. I mean, all I did was
literally
say name
Goebbels.
wrong.
You're literally Goebbels.
But I mean, Joe, who cares? I really hate it that they try to glom onto this fake racism stuff. They have cheapened racism to the point where it's just kind of like everything's racist. You can't even identify what actually is racist anymore. And that might be the plan. That way, everything we do is racist.
Yeah, that's the plan. We're gonna get into this. We had to get that out of the way because you did just have a microaggression. So we just want to make sure we start.
I'm learning. I'm learning. Okay, I'm trying.
Life is one constant learning experience. So Kamala Harris had see now I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. But
yeah, I know.
Kamala
I'm
Harris.
doing the same thing. It's like, how do I say it? Kamala. So just say comma like a comma. La.
Yeah. Kamala Harris today came out with a big policy proposal. Going to fix the economy. Now, on the one hand, she's saying economy's great, running on the Joe Bidenomics record. Nothing to be sad about. But on the other hand, she's promising to fix it. She's promising to fix something that she claims is somehow also not broken. It's hard to do. It's a hard balancing act to do. And if the economy was good, Joe Biden probably wouldn't have been stabbed in the back and forced off the ticket because he would have been popular, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the big part, and we this is the thumbnail. So anyone who's watching on X, you probably didn't see the thumbnail, but the thumbnail for today is Kamala new policy. And I gotta love the AI generator for Twitter.
I love this. Like,
took me a long time. Took me
Yeah.
a long time. Took me a long time.
A lot of prompting, my friend. That was
a
just
lot
sitting
of
there telling the
prompting.
computer what to do.
A lot of prompting. It didn't want to put her into communist apparel. It wanted to put her into a green pantsuit. So I actually had to very specifically say, put her in Fidel Castro's military fatigues.
You're kidding.
And they did that. And I said, okay, now a Soviet Union hat. Like I had to be very specific. And then no matter what I did, I couldn't get her actually be in front of empty shelves. So I did that part myself. But it also kept wanting to put writing on her chest. And if anyone knows with the AI, it doesn't get writing right. It messes up. It does gibberish. So it looks bad if you do. You can kind of notice it on her left sleeve. There's some writing there that's just gibberish. But this was the best one. I also tried to get it to make. I have a big idea for an ad. You know, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know the Mr. Rogers logo.
I haven't seen it in years, and I've watched Mr. Rogers. Yeah, I think I do. I mean, I was happy to be his neighbor.
Yeah, I grew up on this. I grew up on Mr. Rogers. Remember this image? So I have a big idea.
Yeah.
Take this, put Tim Walz's face over it, and have the city burning down, and then have it instead of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it's just one man's socialism is another man's neighborliness.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right.
Like
but
that made my week.
I know. So I've been trying to do this, but AI doesn't know what Tim Walz looks like.
Which blew my mind when you told me that. I was like, there's plenty of them out there. How could it not know?
It doesn't know. It just doesn't know. Let's see if we can get it to do it.
Okay, because I thought it was on purpose that you couldn't get Kamala wearing like fatigues from like some sort of Soviet era stuff. Like it didn't want to do it. Do you think it was on purpose or it just doesn't understand? Because it's all run by algorithms, right? There's all those AI people out there that doing the program, and they're like, just make sure that we don't put Kamala in like, Fidel Castro clothes. And you pulled it off. So
Give me a picture of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz dressed as Mr. Rogers looking at Minnesota burning during a riot.
Oh, let's see where
Let's
this
see
goes.
what it gives us.
Here we go. Yes, this is exciting.
It's not going
Spinning
to
wheel is
be.
happening.
You're going to be like, who's that?
Yeah. Well,
Say that they actually took it literally. There's a
Yeah.
cutout of the state of Minnesota.
Minnesota burning.
That's because I said Minnesota. I didn't say Minneapolis.
Oh,
'Cause that kind of looks like him. Not really though.
no, it doesn't. It's like something out of some sort of TV dad script thing. It's like a 1,000 different white dude dads on TV that have been all meshed together.
Minneapolis.
He's smiling though.
Yeah, let's see if that fixes it.
Uh-oh. It's amazing how fast this stuff cranks it out.
I know.
I love it. I mean, it's just moments.
That's not him.
That's not him. Yeah.
That's not him. Like it's
do
like it knows that he's like this middle-aged white man from the Midwest,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's very weird. It's like
It
doesn't have the pictures of him to look at. It has the description of him.
It's just really interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, it always makes you what's going on in that, the back rooms where the AI gets generated and who's pushing things, making all the buttons happen.
Well, Elon
But
Musk.
what's funny,
Twitter?
the media also can't produce pictures of tin walls while Minnesota was burning, right?
Yeah,
Which is
I
kind
know.
of crazy, right?
Oh, I know. This AI can produce whatever you want. I mean, every other AI says no, that's not appropriate. Like I saw one picture of
Yeah.
they're trying to force him to neuter it. So one guy had the Twitter AI generate a picture of Elon Musk holding an AR-15 next to like Mickey Mouse and Super Mario outside of the Uvalde school with blood pouring out of the doors. Yeah. Basically trying to get copyrighted images in to blame Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone's just dunking. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is your brainchild. You
Yeah.
told it to make this. This is what you wanted to be made.
Yeah.
Elon Musk
prompted
didn't
it.
make this. Yeah, you prompted this.
Right. And in court, who knows how that would shake out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if those kind of cases are coming soon. I mean, it's bound to happen, especially with actors, singers,
We're
artists.
going to get into the Kamala stuff, but the problem with AI is that nothing is original. It's all copied. And then, so in order for it to do anything, it has to see another work. So the difficulty is going to be proving what work it saw.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But
I don't know.
if you know the protocol, that like an AI was told, hey, look at every picture in Getty Images, right? If you know that is how the AI was taught, then you can actually
sue at that point. You'd have standing to some degree, right?
Yeah.
But it would be different. It's crazy. It's a whole fun world. I mean, we used to get, when we worked on another show, just trying to get somebody to make a logo out of something took about 2.5 weeks for something that should have taken 2.5 hours, And now we've got this that's just like boom.
I know. Doesn't know what Tim Walz looks like. Okay, let's get into this because Kamala Harris had a big policy speech. I'm gonna let you guess. Big policy speech. How many people do you think were there?
At the speech,
Mhm.
150. That's a good number.
So you're gonna guess 150 after her week of 15,000 people rallies, 12,000 people rallies.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's a small,
the first unveiling of the policy proposal, you think that after a week of massive rallies, you think they dropped the ball that much, and that they only had 100 or so people?
Well, this would have been an intimate little group, is my guess. Like you would do this in behind closed doors. You got the people that you want to.
Yeah, I'm messing with you. You're right. It was the smallest.
Are you serious? I thought it was going to be from like 10,000.
No, this is the smallest thing ever. This is the smallest thing ever.
Less than 150.
They rented like a high school gym.
No.
And they didn't even take up half the court. There was more space dedicated for media than there were for actual like supporters.
And you know what's crazy is if you were to just put the camera on that one little spot, it would look like a huge backdrop.
Makes it look
like,
big.
I could do incredible things with that backdrop, man.
And you'll remember when Donald Trump, or was it Asheville, North Carolina, when he had a rally in Asheville, North Carolina, they tried to shame him because he rented the venue that only holds 2,000 people instead of the bigger venue that holds 7,000 people. And there are actually more people outside than inside. So they tried to shame him. Oh, wow, he can't get people together. For his economic speech this week, this is what his looked like. So he actually had people.
I had an auditorium.
Right?
Wow.
Like you can rent an auditorium, have people, and it not be an arena. You don't want to give a speech in an arena environment. It's just not conducive to staying on.
No.
But that's the difference. This is Donald Trump, and they made fun of him. Wow, you can't draw a crowd. And now Kamala can't even cover half court.
When you ask me this, I know these things are kind of intimate because they don't want a lot of people there. You don't want that person up in the rafters like heckling, right?
Yeah.
I've ever heard. Like
You don't want-
who walks in these things.
You don't want the pro-Hamas people to light off smoke bombs like
Right.
it happened yesterday in Chicago at a meeting prepping for the DNC. They raided the place and lit off smoke bombs in the middle of their dinner. If you're expecting a love fest tomorrow, if you're expecting a love fest in Chicago at the DNC, think again. Let me see if I can find the guy who.
Well, here's a prediction. I think they barely cover what's going on outside, and the only place you're going to see all those protesters will be on like some independent media, right? The people actually walking up and down the street. Otherwise, CNN is going to be like, it's mostly a peaceful protest. I mean, it's mostly a peaceful DNC as the streets are burning, right? It's all going to be about images. So, I mean, they can't risk people seeing like those things happening at the DNC. They're gonna do everything in their power to hide those protests. They have to. They can't lose more face. So I can't like the spin machine is already geared up and ready for that tomorrow. Weren't they clearing the streets of the homeless prior to this thing happening? Are you there?
Yeah.
I'm frozen. No, I'm good. I'm back.
Can you hear me?
But it's just weird.
Frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen. You're frozen, but I can hear you.
What happened?
But they've got the whole spit machine out while you're getting that ready. I mean, they're moving the homeless. They're making sure that that stuff's just not seen on TV, and it's just kind of hilarious in so many different ways.
Frozen. I'm gonna come out and come back in.
Yeah, no worries, man. I'll just keep filling until you get there. And then Kamala trying to fill these small venues. It's beyond hilarious, gang. And if you're in the comments, go ahead and start talking if you want to. I'm just waiting for Max to get back because it's going to be an interesting weekend for the DNC. Like there's going to be some craziness going on out there, and I often wonder how much of it we're actually going to see. I can't hear you. There you go.
There's a guy who does on Twitter. I was trying to find it. A guy who does geofencing of Democrat events.
Oh,
see how many devices are popping into it.
Oh,
and he said that he's already counted 30,000 devices that have also been connected with Antifa protests, Antifa riots.
No.
Moving into the geofence around the DNC. So that could also just be DNC officials.
Sure. Yeah. Because they're
they're geofencing it. And he's saying that there are tens of thousands of Antifa protesters. And some even international.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Hey, could you imagine having a problem on your hand like Antifa? You pretty much create the thing and then it comes to bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
Like 8 years later, right? In an election cycle. It's hilarious. It's operate, man. Create a problem for somebody else and it might come after us later, but be damned, right?
Here's the guy
on our side.
I'm going to share my screen.
30,000? That's like a small army of Antifa people.
Tony Saruga is the guy who's geofenced all these events.
Yeah.
Over 30,000 international Antifa have already arrived. 500 to 850 arriving every day.
So we could be looking at what 32,000. We'll say.
Yeah.
Potential Antifa there. Could you imagine the kind of worry the Secret Service must have right now?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're already paranoid, right?
Yeah. And like, here's the other bit of this. Well, yeah, I mean, they're super paranoid. They're eating their own, right? They're going after their own right now.
Right.
It's going to be bad. It is going to be very, very bad. But it couldn't happen to worse people. Yeah. It really couldn't happen to worse people. Yeah. So let's get into this Kamala Harris stuff that came out today. I have to re-add the videos, but we can do it one by one. Her big part of her plan was price gouging, to tackle price gouging. Let's listen to that.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Price what?
Price gauging. She's reading a teleprompter. She doesn't actually know what she's saying. Price gouging. Food? She wants to ban price gouging on foods. So her belief is that the reason that everything's too expensive for Americans to afford is because evil corporations have conspired to make it too expensive for people to afford.
What? Price gouging. You're saying price gouging is what she's on, but has the price of corn gone through the roof?
Everything's gone through the roof. So
because of inflation?
Because of inflation. I mean, inflation is part of it. When you print $7 trillion out of thin air, everything gets more expensive. When you give people free money, that creates what's called demand pull inflation. So we saw this especially in like the consumer electronics space when they started sending out those stimulus checks.
Yeah.
You started seeing that the items that were the same price as the stimulus checks all started getting a little bit more expensive. Not because the items had suddenly got more expensive, but because if you're Best Buy and you know people are walking in with $1,000 in their pocket that they just got from the government, well, wouldn't it make sense to take the $800 TV and make it $1,000, get an extra $200? You know they're going to spend it, right?
Yeah.
That's demand pull inflation. As people have more money in their pockets, people are rushing to buy these things. The price increases because you've created an artificial demand for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not why. That's part of the reason why food is more expensive. But there's three drivers behind the CPI, Consumer Price Index, for food. One is just the cost of raw materials. So the war in Ukraine absolutely increased the price of fertilizer because a lot of fertilizer was coming out of Russia. So increase the cost of fertilizer, driving the cost of fertilizer up makes it more expensive to plant crops, right? Yeah. So that increase makes the crops more expensive. So the raw materials does it. Price of labor does it. Not necessarily as much in farms, but it does. But mainly in things like meat packing and processing plants.
Yeah.
They all had to pay people more during COVID to get them to keep working. That drove prices up, right? And then the third real driver of the CPI for food is the cost of energy. Obviously, for farmers, diesel prices are going to determine how expensive it is to pull those crops out and bring them to market. It determines how expensive it is to ship it to a package plant, to ship it to grocery stores, but also energy as a whole will determine the profit margins that are added to those items. Do you know what what item in the grocery stores typically have the highest margins?
That's a tough one. I know there's a lot of low, like a high margin.
That the grocery store tacks on the most amount to the cost.
Meats.
That's one of them. Anything that requires people to prepare it, deli meats, butchers,
there you go.
Seafood counter, those are going to cost a lot. But usually what tends to be the highest, usually 35 to 40% margin, is the frozen food section. Simply because of the cost associated with running those freezers all day, every day, while everyone's opening the door at the same time. So that it tends to have the highest margin. Then the prepared foods, because there's labor associated with it.
Yeah.
Everything else that has to be stocked on the shelf, there's labor associated with that. The cheapest foods, the cheapest items, are always the things that get set up by the outside contractors. So maybe a distributor comes in and says, "Hey, we'll put up a big end cap for you. We'll bring all this beer in and we'll make it the shape of an American flag. And it'll be great."
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! Our people don't have to do it. We'll mark it down for a sale. Perfect. So energy, the cost of energy, cost of gasoline, cost of electricity, drives the CPI up at every stage of the process, from farm literally to table.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, and then you hear Kamala Harris saying, "Oh, it's these greedy grocery stores, these greedy grocery stores." anyone who's working at a grocery store knows that while the margin on frozen food might be 40%, at the end of the year, revenues minus expenses, they're barely making money.
Yeah. Anybody, if you've ever known anybody who's been a buyer for
Yeah.
one of those big chains, you know that they're like, they always tell you we're 60 days from going out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
62 months, right? Like
Yeah.
your big place that delivers your groceries where you go get all your food, they are barely making it and they're price gouging. Well, what about all the economic policies that were implemented by the Biden-Harris administration?
The saying,
I mean, what did they do?
the saying about King Soopers in Denver
Yeah.
was that they are a data company first that just happens to sell food, and that they actually make more on the couponing and the data of their shoppers
Who says this?
than they do. That's just a saying that lots of people have said in the Denver area. It's true with most
Oh.
supermarkets. I mean, look at Costco. Costco would be out of business if it didn't have memberships. The memberships are what Costco profits from. The food that gets put on the shelf, very, very thin profit margins. Most grocery stores will, at the end of the year, if they're smart, will make more on the data than they will on the actual groceries. Because, and this is going to shock you, this is grocery store net profits. So this is from FMI, which is the Food Industry Association. Before COVID, net profit after taxes, supermarkets were making 1% net profit after taxes. For COVID, that jumped up to 3%, and it's been creeping back down. Now it's at 1.6%. Have you ever heard of price gougers who only net 3% profit after taxes? Have you ever heard of that?
Never. Never. Now, imagine being the retailer and being happy about a 2% net increase.
Yeah.
And you're through the roof excited about
Yeah.
it, right? And then you're being called a price gouger. You're the person that brings the community their food, one of the most important pieces in our world, because that's where we get our groceries, right? That is our relationship to food. And they're being told that they're now the evil people, even though most of these stores go directly to the farmer, right? They go directly to the local source, keeping your economy afloat, right?
Well, I mean, for some things, like if you want dragon fruit, you gotta go overseas for that. But
everybody
they
grows
can,
dragon fruit and
like,
bananas, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. But like for me, I'm getting avocados from Mexico, not from California, because it makes more sense to get them from Mexico. When I was just in New Jersey last week, the tomatoes come from New Jersey. They don't come from Texas. You try and source stuff as locally as you can. Why? Because the driving cost is gas, how much it costs to get it to the store. There are a lot of items that are actually next to free. And the only reason they actually cost something is because of how heavy they are and it takes to get actually to market, right? There are a lot of grocery produce items where the majority of the cost is actually gas by weight.
And I just want to thank Biden for making sure all those new oil wells were never tapped.
Yeah.
And he kind of put a moratorium on new exploration for energy because that's the driving cost.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's clearly it's big food, man. They are the problem, and big food is price gouging. Like we got a new enemy all of a sudden from the Dems, right? You got big grocery. Oh, they hate you.
Do you know though, this jump from 1% to 3%? Do you know like what really caused that?
No.
It wasn't increasing prices, it was cutting expenses. So when was the last time you saw a grocery store that's 24 hours?
They've all stopped.
They've all stopped. There might be one or two here now, but all the grocery stores, Walmart's around me used to be 24 hours.
Yeah.
Now it's gone. Closed at 10. Yeah. Grocery store around me used to go until 1 or 2 a.m. Now they're closed at 10, 11. So all of these grocery stores, especially the ones that used to go 24 hours, saved a huge amount of money just by cutting the night shift completely.
Wow, jobs were lost.
Yes.
I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah.
You got to let everybody go.
No, their argument is, oh, well, we moved them around. We focused everyone into the other hours. But yeah, jobs were lost. But when they talk about, these profit margins, not all of the profit margin is the revenue. Some of it is just by reducing expenses. So like
So
even
sad.
that is like,
Sad.
but that's the price gauging, as Kamala Harris says, the price.
Is that different than price
Gauging.
gouging?
Well, she
Is
calls
price
it gauging.
Okay.
She
She's
probably
smart.
calls it
I'm
price
sure she
gauging.
knows this. She's smart.
Yeah. Yeah. She's very smart. Very smart. And there was a bit of honesty to her speech where she admitted that things like bread and ground beef are 50% more expensive now than they were before the pandemic, which is a crazy thing to say when your opponent presided over the economy that you're claiming was 50% cheaper. Let's play that. Oh, and by the way, it took less than 0 seconds for the Trump team to turn this into a mini little ad. Here we go.
A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground
Oh my
beef
God.
is up almost 50%.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
They're literally flipping her speeches and slapping the page for Donald Trump approves this message. It was
Wow.
cheaper with Trump. You
Yeah.
had 4 years. And what did you do? You made bread 50% more expensive. You made meat 50% more expensive. You made eggs 30% more expensive. Milk's 25% more expensive, right? Just go down the list. You can't say it was cheaper 4 years ago without giving a pat on the back to Papa Trump.
Donald. Man, like, who's advising her?
Yeah.
Who's writing this stuff? Like, who's the speechwriter here? Are they trying to bomb? I mean, let's
think
not
they
tell
are.
them they're making mistakes.
Yeah. Here's another clip. I didn't title it, but let's see what this one is.
Sadly, right now, it is out of reach for far too many American families. There's a serious housing shortage. In many places, it's too difficult to build, and it's driving prices up.
No, what's driving prices up are the millions of people they've brought into the country.
Yeah.
They have to
They
live
want housing.
somewhere. And if they're not living in one of the terminals at Logan International Airport in Boston, which they've taken over entire parts of the terminal, or at O'Hare in Chicago, they're taking housing. Right? Or if they're not living in the gymnasium at your kid's school, they are taking housing. There are programs designed to give them rent money so they can take apartments from Americans. You get rid of, I mean, you talk about Donald Trump, we're going to have the biggest mass deportation force in American history. How many housing situations do you think that frees up?
Oh my gosh, squatters. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you name it.
Yeah.
Max, how can you create? They create the very problem they say they're going to fix.
Yes.
This is just the biggest asinine campaign I've ever heard. I'd slap another paid for you by Donald Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, wow.
Rather than destroying our economy, because her plan for housing is to give all first-time home buyers $25 grand.
Bullshit. $25,000? Wait a minute. So is that any American, or is it somebody who just happens to be here who can apply for it?
It's first-time
gonna
home
get
buyers.
it?
First-time home buyers. Let's do a little skit. I'll be the
Okay.
home seller. You be
Okay.
the home buyer who just got $25 grand from Kamala Harris to buy a home.
Okay.
Let's
Here we go.
And scene.
Yeah.
Hi, Josh. I'm selling my home for $400,000. Are you interested?
Absolutely. I've got a great down payment. And I let's do this. What do we got to do to make it happen?
Where do you get the down payment?
It was federal assistance.
How much is it?
$25,000. Good down payment.
Oh.
We're ready to go.
Correction. Sorry, I misread it. The house is actually $425,000.
But you just said it was $400,000.
You see, all this is going to do is increase the cost of houses by $25,000.
Yeah, and then
That's
there's and it's coupled with low supply
That's
and
gonna
high
do.
demand. Like, if you have a home now, you'll never be able to buy it again because the value is going to be so high at some point.
Yes.
You won't be able to afford the taxes.
So
Freak out.
it's a terrible idea. But the way they're going to let you use it is as down payment assistance.
See,
That's even more terrifying. The reason that banks want down payment is so that you have skin in the game to
Yeah.
prove that you're serious about it, that you've saved money,
oh, you've got
and that when that first mortgage payment comes in, you're not going to miss it because you don't want to lose the 20% you just handed over.
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
time that they let you use a gift for a down payment is if it's coming from a family member. And the logic is that if it's coming from a family member, if they're wealthy and you need help with the payment, you could always go to them.
Yeah. Because they already gave you cash.
Not true with the federal government.
Yeah. One and done.
The worst thing that could ever happen to the housing market is give houses to a bunch of people who didn't even go through the process of saving up for the down payment. Because as soon as that they can't make that first payment,
yeah.
they just walk away. Just like a renter who can't be evicted. Oh, I don't have to pay. Like there's no skin in the game, there's no fear of loss.
The bank walks away with 25 G's just like that, too. Because they're going to keep that whole penalty, right? The penalty for not making the first payment would be losing that down payment, right? Because there'll be some crazy terms written. And then now they get to sit on a house. It makes the big banks bigger, especially those big mortgage banks who just sit there and do that kind of stuff, man. So they're helping the very folks they say they don't like, right? That's the craziest part. You would be helping the American people if you just removed those who want to take all the housing away and increase demand. It's it's a simple fix. And she can do it right now. That's the thing that's pissing me off about this. She can do it right now.
All of this, if they really wanted to do this, they could do it right now, rather than, as you just said, promising to do it next time.
When I am elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans.
This idiot, that white guy, back row, nodding. She's vice president now. Is this like a subtle dig at Joe Biden for not making it a priority? Or is it a subtle confession that she's been in office for 3.5 years and hasn't done the job?
Hasn't done a damn thing, right? Wow. She could do it right now. Is anybody besides us? I think a few are. What's that?
Yeah. All these are things she could do right now. And again, the question is, why isn't she doing it? Does she not care? Or are these policy proposals so batshit crazy that even puppet Joe Biden won't touch it with a 10-foot pole?
Yeah.
Like we talk about her, she's Kamala. We're going to price cap. We're going to give everyone free money. Price capping is step one for communism. Everywhere it's been tried, it has failed. Nixon tried it. But every communist society that's tried it to say, you cannot charge more than $5 for this, more than $1 for this loaf of bread. Let's just make it easy. More than $1 for this loaf of bread. Well, what happens when there's a war in the Middle East that drives petroleum, diesel, fuel costs up 15%? And then there's a war in Ukraine that drives fertilizer costs up 25%. And it's no longer possible to produce the grain to make a loaf of bread that can cost $1. What do they think will happen? Do they think these family farms are just going to operate at a loss? Or will they admit what will actually happen? They'll stop growing the food.
Yeah. They'll move to a different crop that's profitable. But
they're all going to be capped.
In business.
They're all going to be capped. They're all going to be capped.
Destroy farming. It'll destroy farming.
Yes.
Altogether.
Yes. If you tell someone that you can only charge $1 for a chicken, just making these easy numbers, to sell a chicken to a slaughterhouse, you can only sell it for $1. Well, as soon as the chicken feed costs rise so high that you physically can't do it, these farms aren't charities. They're not going to produce this food for a loss. So what happens is, and this has happened everywhere it's been tried, the farmers stop producing the food. This leads to widespread shortages. The goal should be to tackle the monopolies, the Tyson Foods, all these monopolies, and encourage competition. Encourage the small guys to try and compete for contracts, to undercut them, to try and drive the prices down. But when you price cap, you send those little guys out of business, because the only ones that can conceivably survive even the slightest increase in fuel costs or fertilizer costs would be the really big conglomerates who could eat the cost because they have a lot of cash reserves, or they can move money around or whatever. The small guys get pushed out of business, which just gives the big guys more power to overpricing. So price caps lead to shortages because they lead to people stop producing food. What does the government do? The government then swoops in and says, we'll produce the food.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what they end up doing. And then you start seeing power over food. And then if anything happens to your large food makers, nobody eats, right? Because there's no small mom and pops anymore to pick up the slack anytime that there's a disconnect in the food chain, essentially. Right? So think about that. It gives a fewer number of people more power over all the food of everybody who lives here, which is a scary thought in itself, because that leads to these stores that you have to shop at, like in the old Soviet Union, where you have to wait 2 hours to go get 1 pound of chicken because it's coming from the government farm and the government store. And now everybody gets to shop at the government anything.
Communism, Encyclopedia Britannica, political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of at least the major means of productions, mines, mills, factories. So when you cap prices, you drive the farms out of business because no one's just gonna do it for free. No one's gonna lose money farming just because the government says they're not allowed to charge more than it actually costs them, right? The government swoops in and says, I can do it better, which we all know that they can't.
Yeah, never have.
So that makes it even worse. Go from shortages to completely empty shelves, because the government is not going to do a better job than the farm that's been in this family for 5 generations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is how you get something like Venezuela, where they were literally eating cats, dogs, and rats that they caught in the streets.
Yeah.
Because once you give government control over these means of production, surprising no one, government is as efficient as everything else that government does.
Yeah.
Right?
Ask
Which
our
is
friends
not
the VA.
Not efficient. Not efficient at all. So the reason that you hear people like us say, oh, well, price caps, that's communism, because this is the first step towards communism. Because when this fails, and it will fail, it will drive inflation up even more. When it does fail, there is no next step. You either retreat and admit it was a failure, which Democrats will never do, or you take the second step towards communism, which is, oh, well, if it's too expensive for you to produce the food, I guess the government's going to have to do it. And that's how you lead to massive famines. I mean, millions of people have starved to death because governments went down this path that Kamala Harris laid out in a small suburban gym today in front of 150 sycophants, right? Tens of millions of people have died because of this.
It's like an apocalypse when people run out of food too.
Yeah.
Because they start eating everything they can get their hands on. They start eating themselves. Talk about the most efficient means of population control. It's like communism breeds a form of population control that leads to complete totalitarianism. Complete. And Kamala Harris just pushed it today. Imagine all those liberal college students out there are like, this is a great idea. We got to share everything. My degree's in nonprofit studies, right?
Yeah.
And it's being just driven into the minds of our young children in schools, college.
I'm no fan of Monsanto. I'm no fan of big agriculture. I think there's probably a lot of merit in the natural, organic kind of crops. But it is also undeniable that there are certain strains of seeds that these companies have produced that allow crops to produce more yield, to grow with less water, to be more drought resistant, to be more pest resistant, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think those advancements happen without a profit to be made?
Not at all, because it's what drove the research in the first place.
Yeah.
To increase profit.
And without that research and advancement, hate it, love it or hate it, right? It's happening. And probably the only reason that the world can even feed almost all of its people is because of this technological advancement. If we didn't increase crop yields and reduce water consumption on many of these crops, wouldn't be able to do it. Just wouldn't be able to do it. So what happens the next time there's a blight, there's a famine, there's a disease that ravages a crop?
Right.
Oh,
Potatoes.
well,
Pick
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Right. We've already seen it before. We know what happens.
That hurts me in my core.
Yeah, I know, but the
Yeah.
potato famine destroyed
I know.
entire people,
I
man.
know.
It was devastating.
I know, but this is
Don't
like
repeat it.
this is like in my DNA to hear that
Yeah.
potato famine, just to shiver.
And it did. I know it but we don't want it to repeat, right?
No, absolutely not. And
We want-
but like that's the Irish part of me. I'm part
Yeah.
Native American, so the other part of me fears when the Europeans brought over a bunch of crops that had pests on them, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden they wiped out native crops because they
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
designed to they weren't prepared to deal with these different pests and diseases. So it goes both ways. The government will not be able to do that.
Yeah.
It will not. I mean, have you seen Interstellar?
Yeah, I saw Interstellar.
The collapse of the world, of
Yeah.
the farming collapse. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
That's
which
what we're
is
talking about.
it was a great movie. Very probable too, right? I mean, those are things that actually wipe out civilization. And
Yeah.
you can artificially accelerate it with communism because
Yeah.
there's never anything you can pivot to. Do you know how many times our country relied on private industry to get something done? And it started at the founding, right?
Yeah.
It was the gun makers, right?
Yeah.
During
Yeah.
World War II, we were asking for things like processed meats that would stay in cans, right? I mean, so
Not
much
just
that
that.
we enjoy.
Refrigerator factories started making tanks,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
Ford factories started making like Jeeps. Like
Yeah.
the Jeep factories, instead of for civilians, were making it for the military. You need innovation. You need the private
Yeah.
sector. And is there a case to be made that some of the increased prices that we all face in the grocery store is a little bit extra that companies have added on? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Is it egregious? No, it's not egregious.
No.
Most of the profits that you see from like Tyson Foods and things like that, yeah, it's because they've increased the scale. They're selling a lot more, and they're reducing costs by closing plants and consolidating. They're not just selling the same amount of product for double the price. They're selling much, much more for a little bit more expensive to accommodate for inflation and everything. And they're cutting costs. Tyson Chicken just shut down a plant yesterday.
Mhm.
Where was
Yeah.
that plant?
Kentucky. No, they had a bunch of Kentucky. They had some fires lately. I want to say it was somewhere.
Perry, Iowa.
Carolina?
Perry,
Was it
Iowa.
Iowa? Wow.
Yeah. Perry, Iowa. 1,200 people will lose their jobs.
Gosh, that's a
And
small town.
that's because Tyson realized that actually they could probably absorb all of the processing that one plant was doing if they split it up across the other existing plants. So maybe run 5 plants at 110% capacity,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they don't need this plant. That sucks. It absolutely sucks,
It's
right?
Well, that's the economy. That's Bidenomics at work. You know, the whole idea is you'd have to do more with less, and that always ends up just hurting the people that do the work.
Have you gone out for like chicken wings lately? Have you seen how small they are? Oh my
No.
God, they're abysmal. They used to get big.
I
wings.
remember the jumbos that I'd get. There's this place we go to. It was like Golden Flame. Absolutely delicious. But they were massive. So that's still what I've got in my head.
Yeah,
Massive
like
chicken wings.
50-cent wing nights, and like, massive.
Yeah.
They're like turkey legs almost. Now they're so small. And they're $1 a wing.
$1 a wing.
Yeah. Well,
dude, I could polish off 30 packs sometimes.
I know.
You know?
But like, and then you say, okay, can I have some blue cheese? Oh, that's extra. You know what I mean? But how can you blame them? Because they're paying a lot more for the dressing.
Yeah.
Right? They're paying a
Imagine
lot more for everything, so they're charging for everything.
I just hate how they try to lie about the whole thing too. Like they're willing to make change. They'll make change just as soon as you elect me. We'll get that change. They'll make that happen as soon as you say yes. And then after that, I'm in control and I'm gonna just do whatever the hell I want. Right?
Yeah.
So show me some shit now. You know what I mean? I have expectations that the people who run government actually run government for me. And you and everybody else. because that's the point of it, not for themselves. And all I see is Kamala Harris just trying to be a dictator.
Yeah, I mean,
she's saying this stuff. She's saying all the right things, Max. She's saying all the right things.
If she does this, though, it will be devastating. You cannot arbitrarily cap the price of goods in the country. You can't do it, especially not in an inflationary environment where everything that it takes to produce these goods operates on a global market.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that movie with orange juice futures? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Trading Places. Trading Places.
Aykroyd, great movie.
Trading
Hilarious.
Hilarious movie. But you see, they're all there on the floor. They're trading orange juice futures on how much they think it's going to cost in the future to make orange juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, there's a future in commodities on everything. Butter, pork belly.
Yeah.
And these are all everyone looking around the world. Okay, how much is it going to cost here? How much is it going to cost here? I mean, little things like, oh, well, there was a blight in the Indonesian crop, so that means it's going to be more expensive here. There are people whose whole lives are just trying to figure out how much is it going to cost to get this good to market.
Yeah.
And they're betting on it. For the government to come in and say, okay, well, actually you can't sell it for more than this. And then the first question is, well, what happens if there's a hurricane in Indonesia? What happens if it rains and the crop's bad? Like, well, what's going to happen? Oh, no, you can't charge more than this. Can't charge more than this. Well, what happens if it actually costs more? What happens if gas doubles like it has in the last 4 years for diesel for these farms? Like, what happens then? Oh, they don't have an answer.
Not our problem.
And as I said, the solution always, what ends up happening is farmers stop producing the food because it doesn't make money, doesn't make sense. The ones that can absorb the cost are the big guys. They try to make it work, like what we just saw with Tyson closing down a plant. They'll do things like that to try and survive. But the government will come in and they'll swoop in and say, we can do it. And there's actually a next step. The government will swoop in and say, we'll control the means of production, which is the definition of communism. But then the government realizes, actually, we don't know how to do this. So then the government will hire the farmers back as like a consultant, the farming experts as a consultant. But the thing is, you still can't produce the crop affordably to sell it at the price cap. So it's just a never-ending cycle, and it never works. It's never profitable, and it leads to empty shelves and people literally starving to death. And the first step in this process is for Kamala Harris going out there and saying this.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Capping the price of food arbitrarily.
That's insane. We'll starve to death. We'll just starve to death. I guess that's the plan. Starve to death. It's as reasonable as any other they've come up with. So are you going to vote for it? I mean, you going to vote for it?
The craziest thing, my little guilty pleasure the last 24 hours has been watching the Never Trump conservatives trying to explain how they're still going to pull the lever for communism. Remember the Republicans for Harris, the Heath Mayos of the world.
I remember.
Heath Mayos of the world. Oh, Republicans for Harris. She is a moderate. Well, there's a reason that she's been hiding from the press for 3 weeks. Yeah. There's a reason that this is her first policy proposal, and surprise, it's communism.
Communism. Communism, everybody.
And it's actually on script because she just mispronounced price gouging because she's just reading it. Right? So this isn't even her off script. This is her team. The big rollout in literally half of a high school gym after hiding from the press for 3 weeks, not talking about policy. The first rollout is communism, baby. You ever hear the story of my mind's also changing on price gouging. I think that there's a scumbag element to it, or like after a hurricane, if all of a sudden
natural disaster, right? Something goes horrible and suddenly it's $12 a bottle for water.
that's a scumbag way. I mean, the devil's advocate side of it is, well, maybe that shopkeeper doesn't know the next time that he's going to be able to get anything to sell again, and he's wondering whether he's going to have a business anymore. So he's trying to generate an entire month of income in his last stock that he has on the shelf. So that's the devil's advocate side. There was a story after Hurricane Katrina, we can end with this, where Hurricane Katrina went through New Orleans, and people on television said, we desperately need generators. So this guy, a couple states away, bought up, I think, a dozen or so generators, 20 generators, rented a U-Haul truck, drove all the way across the country to New Orleans, and said, hey, I have generators. I'm not in business. I had to buy these retail. I took off my work, drive them to you. The price is double what they cost me. So if they cost me $400, they cost you have to pay $800 because I have to pay for my time. I have to pay for the truck rental and the gas. And frankly, I want to make money on this because don't operate a charity. Do you know what they did to that man?
Arrest him, charge him with price gouging.
Threw him in jail.
That's my guess.
Took the generators and used them. Police. Mm-hmm.
It could have been in the hands of Americans willing to pay the price. Like, I know, man, this is the double-edged sword of it, but I'd rather have this, than communism. I'd rather not having to worry what day my communist card has a letter on it that I can go to a store.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to anybody that's lived in the Soviet Union? And the stories about just trying to get their hands on, she said we would just try to get little bits of coffee, and it was great. The one thing they could get a lot of was actually vodka. That was actually surprisingly around for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you wanted toilet paper, it was special, right? Paper bags were just cool.
I talked to a woman who she actually came into my school in middle school. I had a really awesome teacher for history. And to teach this, she brought someone in and told us the story of it and just explained what it was like walking into an American grocery store for the first time. And she burst into tears looking at the cereal aisle. The cereal aisle. A staple in Russia, grains, right? All that. But seeing that there was right in front of you, quite literally 100 different types of breakfast cereals, all full, stacked 6, 7, 8 boxes deep, and all affordable. She broke down in tears. And it really makes you appreciate it because we all go to the grocery store. We see, I mean, nowadays when something's missing, I'm kind of peeved, right? I make a pasta salad and I want a certain kind of pasta and it's out. And I'm like kicking the ground like, oh, damn it. I have to use white penne instead of tricolored penne. Damn it. I really wanted that tricolor.
Damn it.
And you realize that inconvenience in the grand scheme of things is nothing compared to what markets look like under price control, price cap, government control of the means of production, communism that, again, Kamala Harris is promoting.
It's crazy.
Scary stuff.
I mean, COVID kind of made us scared of, things, and we all bought a bunch of toilet paper. Imagine what it's like when you can't get that toilet paper and the black market toilet paper guys show up, and they're more dangerous than drug dealers.
Yeah. I didn't partake in that craziness. I bought a bidet. All you weirdos are fighting over toilet paper. There was no surge in the cost of bidets. I think I got one that just went on top of the toilet bowl for like $20. I'm on my phone just watching people getting punched in the face over toilet paper. I'm like,
I'm fresh and clean.
Don't use it anymore. It's too weird, but that got me through.
Yeah. Like, it's a European thing, but people buy the dumbest things when it goes horribly wrong, right?
Yeah.
And they vote for the worst people when they start saying the dumbest stuff. And I'm worried about it, man. Like, I genuinely sit here and I'm thinking to myself, there are people who want this. There might be like 39% of the people might actually want this perfect communist utopia the thing is going to be produced. And They just don't realize it can't happen. That's why it's a dream. Dream.
Yeah.
Never goes right.
National poll. RMG research. Scott Rasmussen, not to be confused with Rasmussen polling. Trump up 3. Rasmussen polling. Trump up 4. Just out right now.
Bum, bum, bum. Oh, it's that 4% range.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me see if I can find the Emerson one I sent to you. Where is it? Come on. Emerson Trump +2.
Emerson Trump +2. Wow.
Yeah.
Honeymoon is over.
In Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Washington Post average swing states has Trump winning the election. Honeymoon ending over. She'll get a little bump from the DNC, but it's entirely possible she goes into the DNC in all the polling averages tied or behind. It's entirely possible, which they definitely did not expect.
No. That's
right,
fun to watch.
That's it for this edition of the podcast. If you like it, subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, we also go live on Rumble and YouTube. So search for Right Guys Podcast there. Really do appreciate it. We also have the audio edition of the podcast. Please do subscribe to that. Try and make this as audio friendly as possible. That way, if you're out and about with your daily whatever, and you just want to listen during your commute, you can listen to that as well. And also, before we go, Wisconsin tied.
Just now? That just came out?
Yeah, tied.
Bum, bum, bum.
Okay, all right, that's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Ammerling.
Remember, everyone, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together. Have a good weekend. See you next time.
See you guys.